The development of South Africa's post-apartheid foreign policy was and continued to be guided on the 7 principles. Belief in human rights, which extends to the embracing of not only human rights as in political rights, but also embracing the economic, social, and environmental rights. I believe that just and lasting solutions to problems of humankind can only come through the promotion of democracy worldwide. I believe that justice and international law should guide the relations between nation states. I believe that international peace is a goal to which all nations should strive. Where this breaks down, internationally agreed peaceful mechanisms should be utilized to solve conflicts all over. I believe that our foreign policy should reflect the interests of our continent, because our national interests are better safeguarded by us putting Africa first, as we are an integral part of our mother continent. South Africa believes that the economic development of our region, of our country, is our interdependence with each other, with the 54 states of our continent, and with the world at large. When this administration came in 2009, led by President Zuma, we recommitted ourselves to stepping up the ANC-led government, to international relations and cooperations, even leading to the name change, towards building a better Africa in a better world, anchored on a foreign policy that contributes to relations, that contribute to the creation of an environment conducive to sustainable economic growth and development in a peaceful and secure world. Prioritize the African continent by strengthening the African Union and capacitating its structures. We also committed to giving special focus to the implementation of NEPAD programs. Strengthening of regional integration with particular emphasis on improving political and economic integration of our region, of our continent, and beyond. We are committed to assisting in the reconstruction and development of our continent, especially in post-conflict situations, supporting the peace efforts of the African Union and the United Nations on the African continent, thereby confirming that we believe in African provision of African solutions to African problems. We have been successful working together with other SADC member states and the AU, for example, to bring back Madagascar to constitutional normalcy, and also to finalize the challenges that faced Zimbabwe with the last democratic elections that took place there. This country has a good story to tell under the ANC-led government. I'll just cite by a few examples which we've alluded to before, that in the past 5 years, we've not only moved on in stepping up South Africa's stature and participation in international development for peace, security, and development, but that we have also successfully hosted major global events. The 2010 FIFA World Cup, which we hosted, the first on African soil and the most successful is just but one. In 2011, we infused life into climate change negotiations when we hosted COP17 CMP7. We successfully placed the world on an unassailable course through the adoption of the Durban Platform for Enhanced Action, which will culminate in 2015 with the adoption of a protocol or a legal agreement that will be applicable to all by 2020. We are happy to report that the Durban legacy endures and continues to be the basis for future climate change response. We all are aware that climate change challenges know no borders, but that while the developing countries, including South Africa, do not necessarily contribute as much to this man-made challenge, but we continue to suffer mostly. The other milestone is the successful hosting of the Global African Diaspora Summit, an event of historic significance in relations between Africa and its diaspora. The outcome of the summit was the creation of sustainable partnership between the people of African descent in the diaspora and the African continent through a program of action, creation of sustainable dialogue and partnerships, and strengthening of Pan-African solidarity. But above all, we've also adopted a program which had an emphasis on legacy projects. Again, South Africa hosted the historic BRICS summit in March 2013, the first on African soil, whose key outcomes, the Etekuni Action Plan, is being implemented under our chairship to the satisfaction of all BRICS member states. Ladies and gentlemen of the media would recall the key outcomes of the summit, which focus on the launch of the concrete measures towards the establishment of the BRICS-led development bank, the establishment of the BRICS Business Council, the BRICS Business Council, which has hosted the first such a council meeting here in South Africa, and the launch of the BRICS Think Tanks Council. President Zuma also hosted the first BRICS outreach, this time which focused on BRICS leaders and the African leadership, focusing on the theme Unlocking Africa's Potential, BRICS and Africa Cooperation, and on infrastructure. We remain the co-chairs of the Forum FOCAC, Forum for China-Africa, which South Africa will host in 2015. We sought to strengthen our continental organization, as I said earlier on, and we continue to work on that. And we will elaborate later on what other initiatives we are undertaking along these lines. You would recall that in 2013, South Africa participated in the Jubilee celebration, the 50th anniversary of the formation of the OAU-AU, and that in January 2014, we had held the first Executive Council retreat of foreign ministers and international relations ministers, which looked at a draft Agenda 2063, which emanates from the vision that was adopted by heads of states as we celebrated the OAU, the formation of the OAU-AU Jubilee in 2013. We have African peer review mechanism, South Africa's own mechanism to look on how we are faring and how we ourselves have this mechanism that is created, formed, envisioned by African leaders themselves, and that year by year we see an increment. I think we're about 13 countries that have now joined the APRM, African PM Review Mechanism, on their own volition. In January 2014, at the 20th summit of the Committee of Participating Heads of States for the APRM Forum, South Africa presented its third progress report on the implementation of the APRM National Program of Action. Following the presentation of its third report, South Africa is in a position to undergo the second APRM periodic review. What is happening is that all the eminent persons, but also Professor Sawyer, who conducted the reviewing of this report, gave accolades to South Africa for the progress we have made since we've acceded to the APRM. On NEPAD and infrastructure development in the continent, we not only believe that Africa's future lies in Africa trading with Africa, but that we can only be successful in doing that if we continue integrating our economies. But that there's no integration of our economies if we don't focus on infrastructure build and connectivity on our continent. We are glad to inform you that our president, who led the championship of the Presidential Infrastructure Championing Initiative of the AU, has done very well, and that we are on course in the completion of the road and rail connectivity in our continent. On peace, security, and stability, we continue to work with other progressive forces and other countries on the continent to champion that, because peace, security, and development are intertwined. You will not have development if you don't sustain peace and security, and vice versa. During this term, South Africa returned to the United Nations Security Council as a non-permanent member, and amongst the highlights of the work we did there was one, just being re-elected with more than 2/3 a majority of the UN member states, but above all also that we championed and had an adoption of the historic UN Security Council Resolution 2033, which emphasized and also formalized the strengthening and promotion of cooperation between the UN Security Council and the Africa as a region of the UN for issues peace and security on our continent. Ladies and gentlemen of the media would recall that on issues peace and security globally, 70% of those that which reach the United Nations Security Council table would be emanating from our continent. However, as a country, we remain concerned that as we move towards the celebration of the 70th anniversary of the existence of the UN and its United Nations its Security Council, the Security Council still remains undemocratic, unrepresentative, and unfair to developing nations and small states. And that a free Africa with almost 54 states that are now free since 1945, there is zero representation in that regard. We would have been happier and would continue to push that as we look at this anniversary, 70th anniversary, at least we also make significant progress in a United Nations and Security Council that will be reformed, more inclusive, democratic, and representative by 2015. During this tenure, we've also witnessed the birth of a new state on our continent, the state of South Sudan. South Africa continues to contribute to capacity building and development of governance institutions in South Sudan through various programs conducted by our national government departments. Meanwhile, we remain concerned with the restive situation that continues in that country, but we are heartened by the progress that the negotiators are making through the support of IGAD, but also that South Africa, through President Zuma, responded to the call made by both sides that are in conflict at the moment in South Sudan. President appointed Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa as a special envoy to work with the people of South Sudan on reconciliation and finding peaceful and political solutions to the current challenge they're facing, supporting the efforts of the IGAD. We should also not forget that the people of Western Sahara remain unhappy as the only occupied territory on our continent. We deemed it necessary, in the spirit of the outcomes of the AU summit, to take our sisterly relations with Sahrawi Republic, Arab Democratic Republic, to a high level by signing a MOU on bilateral consultations towards the end of last year. South Africa continues to recognize the inalienable right of the Palestinian people to national self-determination in a sovereign Palestinian state, existing side by side and living at peace with the state of Israel, both which would exist side by side within secure borders. We continue back home and in our region to strengthen the mechanisms we have, as I said earlier, on strengthening the intra-trade on our continent, looking at that which needs attention in SACU and also in the tripartite FTA of SACU, of SADC, EAC, and COMESA. On our DTI, our sister department, continues to look at other mechanisms that could help us accelerate this process. Bilaterals with countries of the world are conducted successfully, both in the continent and beyond. We continue to strengthen South-South relations, which is quite historic for us, not only at the political level, but also strengthening economic cooperation with the countries of the South. I've elaborated at length on the work we do with one of the byproducts of this being BRICS, but also that we are also participating in the formation we belong to, which we have also founded, the IPSA, India, Brazil, South Africa. And we also continue to strengthen relations with the countries of the North through the promotion and sustenance of the strategic partnership we have with the EU. On the side of America, we are working and continue to do so to advocate for the extension of the AGOA, or African Growth and Opportunity Act, because we believe South Africa should remain benefiting from this AGOA like all other countries in our continent beyond 2015. We are members of the G20, and we continue to use the participation of our G20 membership to promote and strengthen the interests not only of South Africa, but of Africa and of other South countries, on the understanding that if managed carefully, G20 does represent a meaningful opportunity for advancing much needed global governance reforms and orienting the international development agenda. In September, there will be a special summit hosted by the Secretary General of the UN as we continue to work together as members of the UN family to look at the post-2015 developmental agenda. Since mid-2012, South Africa has been playing an important and a prominent role in the preparation for the intergovernmental process that will shape the UN development agenda beyond 2015, which is the target date for the achievement of Millennium Development Goals. In addressing issues related to the UN development agenda beyond 2015, it is critical that we build or also make sure that we do not forget the unfinished business of MDGs and addressing existing gaps that may have arisen, particularly because of the negative impact of the global economic and financial meltdown that came in 2008. More momentum and commitment, therefore, needs to be generated towards the achievement of these MDGs, not only by 2015, but beyond. Any development agenda beyond 2015 should also address the three dimensions of sustainable development: the social, economic, and environmental issues in an inclusive, balanced, and integrated manner. Ladies and gentlemen of the media would recall that South Africa on the 1st January 2013 started serving on a 3-year term as a member now again of ECOSOC. South Africa's priority in the Council is to ensure that articulation of post-2015 UN development agenda is compatible with South Africa's own development agenda as articulated in the National Development Plan, the aspirations of the African Union, and development agenda of the South. Moreover, a strengthened ECOSOC should continue as the main focus for the deliberations of social development issues. I have spoken at length also on issues climate change earlier on. On human rights, South Africa was one of the 14 new member states elected to serve on the United Nations Human Rights Council from January 2014 until December 2016. Our election coincides with our country's celebration of the 20th anniversary of democracy and reaffirms our commitment to achievement of human rights for all citizens, the citizens of the continent and of the world. Furthermore, our election to this auspicious body reflects the important role that our country plays in shaping the international human rights agenda. We remain committed to work for the strengthening of international human rights system through the development of norms and standards in the area of human rights, and to continue to advocate for government's principled position which affirms the inextricability between the economic, social, and cultural rights on one hand and civil and political rights on the other.